Hi, I'm Markku Wilenius, a traveling futurist. Today I'm going to talk about Italy, the future of Italy. I'm here right now in this beautiful country. You see, this is the sea over the southern part of Toscana called Mount Argentario. There are beautiful mountains here, beautiful buildings. The nature in all is very powerful. The question is, what is specific role of Italy in building the future of the Europe and future of the world? And we need to explore a little bit of the past to understand what type of the possibilities there might be. The first that comes down to Italy is that it was one of the first nations, and now we go back to 2000 years, which built a kind of a civilization which was based on really urban structures. Their mobility systems were highly progressive and developed at the time, and indeed they built the whole Roman Imperium as we know it. This happened at the time where other civilizations, other cultures were still in a very early stage of putting together something that today is a representation of the modern society. So in the imperium which the Romans built at the time was a kind of a lot of those elements that later became a kind of a standard of how societies built on urban structures is being built. Then came obviously the Renaissance. What was important about the Renaissance and why it happened in Italy, particularly in the area of Toscana and particularly Florence, was the fact that that changed the whole idea of who we are as human beings. So they resisted the old idea that human being is a kind of a representation of something. They wanted to go to the hard facts. They wanted to go to more empirical. For instance, Leonardo da Vinci, one of the biggest genius, if not the biggest of all time, he was relentlessly trying to perceive how the human being actually works, what's the anatomy of that, but also what he can build. All this engineering that he did at the time was hugely advanced in those days, but the idea of the beauty came around in a very different way. So, and of course there were many others like Michelangelo and Raphael and so forth, but the idea of the beauty and the harmony that was also described in the ratios, how the piazzas had been built, what type of the buildings have been built, also came to what we are as human beings and how to express that beauty which is expressed in human beings. And the Renaissance, in terms of the art, in terms of the design, was the first period of time when this type of approach was the basis of this impulse that came to have a great impact for the world, and in fact created later on the modern science and the modern idea of the society. Then later on what happened was that Italy came to be in one of those nation states after being for centuries kind of built on the little city-states. They became a nation, as well as many other nation-states was formed then 200 or 150 years ago, and suddenly started to appear very different kind of idea, how this kind of a area that has a kind of a common source of the history, even if people might look very different when you go to the south, to the Sicily, to the north, to Trento, for instance, still there was something that united, that it was not just an Italian language, but it's also something of the culture. And the culture, particularly not only in those forms that I was mentioning about the art and design, but also the food. And we know even today that if we want to have a really good food, we often go to the Italian restaurant because that's something that Italians can do well. Now, future is everything about how we create a harmony, how we create a harmony between the nature and human being, how do we create a harmony into our society, how do we harmonize our relationships. And for that, sometimes you need to be very bold, you need to be able to kind of detach yourself from the past patterns, from the past way of looking and doing things. And maybe Italy has a role in there. I have been recently very much encouraged by the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi, who has been kind of has become almost like a conscience of the whole Europe by talking about how we need to deal with the new situation that happened when Russians invaded Ukraine. And he has been the one who says that, well, if somebody does such a nasty thing to the kind of a brother or sister state, we need to be able to react on that, because if we don't do that, then later on the price is going to be much higher. And Mario Draghi has been one of the first who has been saying this out and loud, that Europe has to bear its responsibility. But moving further into the future, I would say that the future of Italy kind of lies in sort of roughly 3 domains. The first domain has something to do with how we sort of regenerate and revitalize our food systems. As I mentioned earlier, and as everybody knows, Italy has a very advanced food production system, and the role of the food production, farming, agriculture, winemaking, all that is very important. Now, we all know that to create a harmony with nature, we need to get out of this kind of an industrial way of producing food for the people. This is particularly because the way that we have been treating our lands, the fertilizers, the chemicals, are destroying the topsoil of the country. So something very different idea has to come out that harmonize our relationship with the nature, and indeed, practically speaking, create a new methods and tools how we can raise our food, which is of course related to one of the very basic human needs. This is a huge issue currently because World Food Organization, FAO, has stated that there might be just about 60 harvests left before the topsoil of the most of the cultivated soils around the world will be diminished to very minimal, if not totally extinct, meaning that there are no microbes, enzymes, kind of a living soils, because of this massive fertilization and chemicalization of the agricultural industry. So I hope that Italy, knowing that they have a tendency to appreciate the high quality food, they would also see this as an opportunity, this need that is a global need to show the way how we can create more sustainable food systems. The other part where I see that Italy can play a great role is the way that we are designing our cities. Now, if you go to any harmonized sort of Italian cities here in Toscana or elsewhere, Umbria for instance, what you will find from there is that they knew how to build a beautiful cities. They know how to build the right size of the plaza. They knew how to build the beautiful kind of buildings. So they had this, they've had over the centuries and millennia, they have created this sense of how to build beautiful urban surroundings, even if we see a lot of other examples as well, that particularly the fast modernization in the 1950s, 60s and 70s brought about. But we need to get back to that type of urban infrastructure and planning that really appreciates the place of the human in there. So the kind of take the human scale into account and build a much more natural, harmonized environments into the cities where most of the people of the world today are living. I think that is the kind of an impulse that may come from, indeed, from Italy. And maybe last, now that we are progressing as human species to the level where more and more people can be actually either working in any part of the world that they want to, and also choosing more freely of their profession. And this has become true because it's so much easier to us either to educate or learn or to work regardless of the space, but also because we are much more educated as human beings and because we have all the technology. So the idea that might be here for Italy has to do with how do we actually build a type of the societies where culture has a more important role. Because if you look at the particularly last 70 years, which has been a rapid expansion, exponential economic and technology development, what has left behind is the culture. And that we need to kind of get back to its proper place so that it's even with the economy, even with the social aspect of the society. And again, I believe that this type of cultural force that needs to become a part of the societies anywhere in the world, that has been experienced time and again in Italy, and maybe Italy is the country that can bring that idea into the future of the world to be more aligned with our cultural interest, cultural expressions, all that human creativity is ultimately all about. So these three aspects, I believe, if taken seriously in Italy, will make Italy a country that can seriously contribute to the future of the world.